Hello and welcome back to How It's Done TV. I got a special guest for you, Mayor of Wadsworth, Robin Laubaug, and thank you. I've been looking forward to this interview a lot. I would like to just give the general public an idea of who you are and what you do here. Could you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and family?
Background and family, okay. Well, my family moved here a long time ago. I was actually 4, almost 5, and so I went through all of Wadsworth City schools, kindergarten through graduated from high school. I went to college at Brigham Young University, majored in finance and financial background, and then came back here. My husband and I were married, and we've lived here ever since and raised our family here and call Wadsworth our home and love it.
Now, how did you get involved? I know that you did city council before you became mayor. How did you get involved in that, and what pushed you towards it?
Well, I would say early on, as I mentioned, I graduated with a degree in finance, and so I worked in the financial field. But our children started coming along, and was at home with them initially, but still had the interest in getting involved in the community. So as they started getting a little bit older, I started doing volunteering, and then I started doing more and more volunteering and more, and just enjoyed that aspect of working with people and making a difference in the community. And so at one point, I was asked to run for city council and considered that, and so I decided to do that and loved it ever since.
Now, how was that being on city council and all the volunteer work you did with also balancing family?
Well, it was interesting. Actually, we're sitting here in the council chambers, and I can remember many meetings where I would line my kids up. We have 4 children, and I'd line them up in the back row with crayons and coloring books, and I would look at them. I'd say, "If you make a peep, this is not good," because of course we televise all of our committee meetings and so forth, and so that was a balancing act. But thankfully, I have a very supportive husband as well, and obviously lots of night meetings and that sort of thing, and so he was the one that was doing all the picking up and taking care of things when I was away, so it was a team effort.
Now, becoming mayor, what led you up to deciding to run for mayor?
Well, I had served 10 years total on city council. The first 6 were as council at large, and then I was council president for 4 years. And when I was council president, Jim Renacci was when I was actually president pro tem, Jim Renacci was president of council, and then when he was mayor, I was president of council. And so he chose just to run for the 4 years, and so after his term, we needed somebody else to run for mayor, and by that time I'd been serving for a long time on city council, and really enjoyed the city, and had the time and ability, because being mayor takes a lot of time, and I had the ability to jump into that position, but also I had the interest and the love of the community and love of the services. So
now, being a mayor, that is a lot of different things that you got to do. How is that transitioning from previously being in finance to city council, then taking on the mayor's job? It's not like there's a course for it.
No, there's not. There's a lot of learning along the way. And I would say, actually, all of those experiences that you suggest really added to my information that I had coming into being mayor. Serving on city council was very important because I learned all about the services. I chaired public service committee for many years, and it really is admirable as far as a community of our size, actually a community of any size, but particularly of our size, that has the number of services that we have.
Yes.
And with that, there's a lot of learning, and so I learned about each of the services that we provide and the time and effort and expertise that was needed to be able to provide that. And so that was a great learning experience. My volunteer work prior to that worked with all the nonprofits, volunteered with a lot of them, worked with the schools quite a bit, and all that was very, very important, kind of learning to do what I'm doing today. A lot of people, working with people.
Yes, yes. In regards to taking over and being mayor, was it intimidating or hard at all since you're a female? It's predominantly in Wadsworth been held by a male.
Yeah. You're correct. I'm actually the first woman mayor. And, you know, through my years of volunteering and then years on city council, I never had that as an issue. That didn't come up that, oh, goodness, she's female. They looked at me as Robin, and I did my homework, and she was doing a good job, and so there was no issue with that. But I did recognize as I won that election that I thought, you know, I am going to be the first female mayor, and it's a little different being on council versus, you know, all of a sudden being mayor. And I thought, as I said, I just wondered if that would be any sort of an issue. And I remember walking upstairs into my office my very first day and kind of having that in my mind. And I walked through, and everybody was as respectful and as kind and helpful as they possibly could be. We just had a wonderful first great week and never looked back. So never had a problem.
And you're also
and
the longest running mayor in Wadsworth.
Yes. This is my 15th year. And prior to me was actually John Hanna. He served for 10 years. He had a remaining term of 2 years because prior to that was Doc Daniels, who had passed in office. And then there was another couple terms after that. So.
Now, being mayor and shifting into more of the public light, how was that for you as a mom and as a wife? Because now the eye is on you.
Well, you mentioned mom. You know, I told my kids, we would always say, believe me, I'm going to find out. If there's something you ever do, I'm going to find out because someone will tell me. So I think in some regards that helped them to be better than they might have been, but not to say that they were perfect, believe me. They did their fair share. But anyways, but I think it brought an interesting perspective because obviously, you know, I go to the grocery store, I go to shopping and so forth, and people see me. And at first I thought, you know, this will be kind of interesting, but actually I get a lot of business done. Someone will see me and like, hey, I was meaning to ask you, or I was going to call you. And so I get a lot of business done, but yeah, it's good.
Now, you have been married for how long?
Married? Oh gosh, we're coming up on 40 years.
So how was that balancing your marriage? What did you do for somebody that is so active in the community, busy all the time? Is there anything special that you did to keep your marriage going that you have advice for anybody else?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I mentioned I have a very supportive husband, and I say that from day one because we were chatting about Kaleidoscope Playground, which was a huge effort, and I was doing that as a volunteer. Myself and Pam Chester led that effort so many years ago, and I could not have done that without him because our kids were young, and I remember, you know, I'd put him down for a nap, and he'd come home from lunch, and I'd be a line off to make copies or whatever. In those days, we didn't have, I mean, it was a different world. But anyways, from those, many years ago through today, even today, because it takes a lot. I'm gone more than I would like to say, and he picks up chores around the home, and I'm very appreciative of it. So he's been a great team player. So I think that's been one thing, is that he certainly has done his part. And I try to remember in my part that I need to be cognizant of how much he does, and so I try to help out on my end as well. But we just make it work.
It's really nice when I see you at events or I see you doing specific things. He's usually there with you, which is nice. It's not like he's below because he's not the mayor. You guys are a team, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Now, going into being a mayor, could you explain to everybody specifically what does a mayor do?
That's a good question. Well, if you take back to your government lessons, there's 3 branches of government, and my branch of government's the executive branch of government, and basically we're tasked with the day-to-day operations of running, in our case, the city. And in those day-to-day operations, basically we have many, many services which we provide for the citizens. And so it could be water, electric, taking care of our parks. It could be our safety services, senior center, whatever. We've got many, many services. And our city is actually quite unique. We have many more services than other communities have. So it's somewhat unique to have our own electric division, certainly cable, internet, phone, and so forth, along with all the other more traditional services. But quite frankly, I didn't even realize when I first started city council, I assumed, for example, all cities treated their own water. All cities, treated their own wastewater and so forth, versus many contract.
That's what I thought growing up.
So we do it all, with the exception we don't do gas, but we do everything else. And so we have a lot to handle. Quite frankly, we do, and we have a very lean ship. We have excellent individuals that are experts in their field, and they do a tremendous job of overseeing each and every one of those divisions. And so, anyways,
I think there's a misconception that everybody thinks that you literally oversee and do everything. But you mentioned that you have a safety director. You got a bunch of people that is in their own field. And then do they report to you? Okay. Now with that's saying that you don't get to make an overall say on something. It has to be agreed upon, correct? Especially with city council?
Sure. Well, it would be pretty overwhelming to be me making a decision on each and every single aspect in each and every division, because we have so many. I do have a service director that oversees all the services. We actually have an assistant service director as well, because we have so many. We have a safety director that oversees our safety forces. So Mr. Hiscock, Mr. Patrick is our service director. But then in addition, they then have supervisors. And then there are leaders and crew leaders and so forth underneath each of them. And so there's a lot of different levels, and of course it depends on the decision that has to be made. Most things just happen. It's like clockwork. A situation occurs, they kick into gear. But it's those maybe one-off or those unusual type things, or let's say we're going, we are progressing in a direction. I'm very much often involved with those decisions.
So basically, you're the mayor, and then you have your tree below you, but you all work together as a team.
Yeah, we have a great team, and as I said, very fortunate to work with those that have such a great level of expertise and are wonderful leaders. They really are. So
do you as a mayor or anybody else in City Hall go out and seek businesses to come to Wadsworth?
Good question. So another individual that directly reports to me is our economic development director.
Okay.
And that's Matt Springer. He's doing a phenomenal job. He really is. And so certainly we have interests in bringing in business of all types. It could be manufacturing, it could be commercial, and so forth. And much of his time, and my time as well, is working with those that are actually already here, because a healthy community gets even healthier when our existing businesses do better and better and expand. And so we spend a lot of effort in that. But certainly, are there things that we'd like to have? So I'll give you a prime example. Right now we are working and designing a restaurant grant. So for example, like many people that I've heard, we'd like to have additional restaurants. We love our restaurants that we have now, but wouldn't it be nice to have even more? Because I would dare say many people travel outside of Wadsworth for their dining, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, as much as they support our already existing. So maybe we could handle some additional ones here. But it's high cost, obviously, to put together a kitchen and that sort of thing. And so we recognize that. And is there something that we can do on our end to maybe incentivize or to attract, let's say, I don't say incentive, but basically attract, basically to say, hey, listen, we are very business friendly,
Yeah.
and we're very interested in helping in that regard. And so, to answer your question is yes, we do have the ability and have gone out and said, hey, listen, business XYZ. Check out Wadsworth. We've got properties available. Here are the properties available that might suit your needs. Come on down.
Now, when a business or organization or church applies to build or take over a building, they have to go through a process, and then it also involves the county for the permits and everything else. Can you or anybody in City Hall say, no, we don't want you?
No. So with the exception, let's say it all comes down to zoning.
Okay.
And what is that you're able to build or do in a particular zoning classification. So for example, if you had this big manufacturer, this heavy industrial, and they wanted to move right into a residential area, we could say no, because that is not zoned appropriately. But if it's zoned industrial and the type of industry that they were going to be providing, and they met the requirements as far as the setback, the lighting, the this, the that, then they would be eligible to come. And we would not be able to say, no, we don't like that particular business because of whatever reason. Because we live in America. And that's important that people have the ability to buy property, to sell property, to lease property. And as long as they are obeying the rules and regulations that are surrounding that zoning code, as I said, they have that ability. There's still a process to go through to make sure that they are adhering to that zoning code. But if they do, that they get approval.
So what I have learned over time is okay, we'll take the new Coles area over there, and they have a specific zoning for if you want to build outside or you want to have a sign. And then you would have like the Walmart area, of course, they have their own. How do you handle when people say, okay, I don't want a business inside of this already built-in plaza structure. I want a separate one or I'm not going to come. Is there talks to change the zoning code, or how does that work? Because I know people talked about, oh, they wanted a Chick-fil-A to come and be up on that area, but because of zoning, I'm assuming it's because of also safety reasons, depending where you put specific businesses, because that is a high traffic area right there. Is there a process that the city can go through that if the citizens bring it up to change it?
So it's lots of questions in there. So for example, a Chick-fil-A that you had mentioned, secret, I happen to like Chick-fil-A a lot. And so I've talked to the people that talk to this, and you know what I've learned is Chick-fil-A is going to come where they want to come.
Yes.
Because they have their own business models that they look at, regardless of what you provide them. But we'd love to have a Chick-fil-A, because as I said, I'm a fan. But bottom line is and Chick-fil-A could determine, hey, I want to come to XYZ spot, and as I said, as long as they meet the requirements and so forth, they would be permitted. Now you mentioned safety, and something like that, traffic as far as car traffic and things like that. That's what zoning's all about, is where do you want your traffic? A lot of times it's close to those interstates or those intersections. And so that's why along interstates that you often see commercial property, because it keeps that traffic from maybe coming right downtown or in the residential areas and so forth. And so, but there is a process that they go through, and it's determined. They would present a plan, and it would be examined, and they would be required to have a traffic analysis being done to make sure that area would be able to handle that type of traffic. And if it couldn't, if they still want to build, then they would have to make improvements to those intersections or whatever area that was determined to be able to accommodate that area. And so there's a lot that goes into larger developments, particularly.
Now, when it comes to certain areas, say, let's talk about the Great Oaks area right there where you're coming out from the Galaxy, and I'll head on, and people have complained about the lights. You don't control that. does that go through somebody that they do a study on?
Yes. So actually that area, that corridor was improved, I don't remember how many years ago now, 5, 6 years? I can't remember. Anyways, there was actually at least a year, maybe more than that, of detailed design to basically get that to where it is today, because before it was kind of a nightmare going up there.
Yes.
And so at least my own personal opinion and from what I've been hearing is that it's been drastically improved. There have been comments, I know, on that light as far as, oh, maybe we should have a light coming out of Galaxy. Anyways, there's a little bit of confusion on that one spot. We've heard that. But bottom line is when it was designed, it was thought that this is the best way to get people from A to Z, the quickest possible, safest possible, and so forth. Now, is there ever changes to those plans and that sort of thing? And there could be at some point, if ever you have, let's say there's more accidents than usual, or there is more, I don't know, through examination that maybe there should be some tweaking done.
Silver Creek, I know that a light was finally put there and it's made things better.
Yeah. So, and that's another great example because that was desired. People wanted to have people that live in that area, they're like, could we get a light? And it was because, really, it was 2 times during the day. Starting a school, ending a school, that area was really tough to get through. The rest of the time, it was fairly manageable. And we have to rely upon, it has to warrant, basically, get to the point where it qualifies to have a light, and so it has to have a certain number of traffic counts and that sort of thing. It finally triggered, and we were able to get that light. And I finally said, "Thank goodness!" I was so excited. And why is that? Why do they do that? Why does the state have those regulations and that sort of thing? And bottom line is, the hope is to be able to get the great majority of the public through an area as seamlessly as possible.
Yes.
And when you have a light where a light shouldn't be, basically you've got people stopped and they're waiting for a long time, and then they get to go. And that's not that big of a deal, but when you have thousands of cars over time, that creates a lot of time and obviously emissions and all that sort of thing. So then you go through, if you don't need a light, you don't have a light there. But when a light is needed, and such as that, when it finally hit that warrant, it finally kicked it in gear, we were able to get it.
Now, what do you say to the people of the community that don't like the growth? They don't like the change. They feel that it's too much. I have experienced this in Medina where I'm driving to work and they just tore down an area and there's deer right there in the square. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. There was actually a time when I was on city council in the early 2000s, and I'm like, we are growing too fast. And how are we, like I was just a little bit concerned that might occur. But then it started settling down and the market bore. But like right now, like you would say, how much is too much growth? Well, our community's been growing about 1.5% a year.
Okay.
Is that crazy growth? 1.5% is not really. It's actually very a nice progression of growth. It's been said, and I have that philosophy as well, is that if you are not growing at all, then there's a downside to that. So community has to have a little bit of growth to have some vitality to be able to keep improving and being able to sustain itself. And so to me, a nice measured growth is appropriate. And as I said, I think we've been accomplishing that over the last many years, which is good.
Now, with the growth, which has been great for a lot of businesses, a lot of people in the community, because they don't have to drive so far to get to, now we got Michael's, okay? What do you say to the people that feel like our rent, our housing prices are going up, and they feel like they can't afford to live in Wadsworth, and they feel almost as if the city's doing that to them on purpose?
Well, I would say, first of all, the city, which, do I have control over rents? No way. Don't have any influence on that. That is the market. And sadly, the market, not just in Wadsworth, but I would say countrywide, has really been changing over the last several years, particularly in the areas that are of high growth. I have family members that live in some high growth areas, and homes are basically doubling in prices, and that means rents are doubling and even more so. And particularly now with COVID and after COVID, we've had some, growth with homes, but also we've had supply chain issues,
Yes.
Escalation of prices for materials and that sort of thing, and that basically eventually translates into what people are commanding for, for home prices and so forth. And so to me, it's an issue. And what happens is then that all of a sudden that growth starts to climb back a little bit. It pulls back. Because, as you said, people can't afford to come to a community. And so maybe we won't grow 1 to 1.5% this year. Maybe it's going to be flat. And I would say Wadsworth really does not have a lot of empty lots that have not been built or developed. And so we will have fewer homes built because of that. And then really the only time that you grow after that is property that is on the outskirts of Wadsworth. Then they say, we'd like to annex, or we'd like to come into the city mainly to be able to utilize services, and we'd like to build some other homes. And so, but the market will bear. Basically what happens is the market says, hey, listen, people want to come to Wadsworth, they don't have any place to go, that might be a time to come into the city.
So before you grow, I know that you oversee the police and you oversee the fire. So basically, if you're going to have massive growth in one area and more residents, do you have to make sure that the services can support that with growth as well?
Yes. That's another great point, because some of the services are particularly affected. And so, for example, you mentioned our safety services. Our EMS example is they have had, over the last 5 years, even though we've only been growing 1 to 1.5%, over the last 5 years, we've had 25% increase in our need to provide services for our EMS. Why is that? I don't know. We haven't done like a deep dive, but I will say that we do have, a population. We have a older population, and are users of that service. I think people are using that service more often. Regardless of the reasoning, we are having more individuals that utilize our safety forces, and so we need to make sure that we have enough individuals to provide that service. And so we look and we say, you know what, we need to add another individual on this shift, another individual on this shift. And so that definitely has been examined, and we've been adding,
Have you had any, over the last several years, there's been issues where people blame the mayor and the city for certain things of police action. Now, we're very lucky and blessed here in Wadsworth that hasn't been the case, but does that put strain on you? Is there training that you guys do to make sure that things like that hopefully don't happen?
Yeah, that's a wonderful, I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because first of all, we are so fortunate. We have an amazing safety forces in general, but our police are tremendous, and we actually have we have a newer force. We've got some newer individuals that have come on. We've had some retirements and so forth, and but we've got a great group that we're working with, and whenever I do a swearing-in ceremony, I always tell them that they are a very respected group. They're very present in the community, and community members are proud of their safety forces. They feel safe, and they're grateful to them. So very fortunate. And the other thing that we've got going for us is that we have, first of all, Chief Chafin, who's our amazing chief, and even prior to him, though, is that we have assured that our police have adequate training on a variety of topics and needs. And some have some specialties, definitely, but they are well skilled and well trained, because in today's society, we've heard about some, horrible occurrences in other areas, not ours, but in other areas. And how do you make sure that those type of things don't happen in your community? And that is you get good quality individuals, first of all. And those police that we hire, they go through an extensive process to be able to get hired. So if you see a policeman from the city of Wadsworth, you know that they went through a very lengthy,
So they do have a big process, because some people are like, oh, they just get the training and then they're on there. But
No,
I know some cities.
Yes, it's not easy to become a policeman in the city of Wadsworth. They go through extensive backgrounds and so forth to become. And then once they become, they certainly are trained afterwards, and then are mentored throughout. So, but we put a lot of resources and emphasis into our police.
Now, flowing from that over to the schools, a lot of changes has happened with the schools, and unfortunately a lot of school shootings and things. Have you been part of the process to make sure our schools are safe?
Good question. Well, I will say, first of all, that we have a lot of coordination between the schools and the city. Obviously, they're different governmental entities, but we have regular communications, and actually a standing regular meeting that we have with the schools on a number of issues, because it's amazing how many things that we have that we coordinate on. But in particular, obviously, we have resources. We have 2 resource officers right now that we have designated towards to the schools, and there was a lot of coordination between Safety Director Hiscock and Superintendent Hill. And then there's a lot of training and a lot of other things that they coordinate, as you said, because that is a very, very important aspect of keeping a community safe. So I myself am not like in the weeds on that one, but I will tell you, Safety Director Hiscock is, and then he reports to me on that aspect.
Now, let's go back to COVID. What was going through your mind right before the shutdown? Did you think we were going to be shut down?
I remember it was interesting times. I had actually traveled to Washington, D.C. on city business immediately prior to that time. And then I did a side trip after that. So I had come back, and I remember it was starting to get a little bit, oh, what's going on with this COVID thing? We were starting to hear about it. And it was maybe that week after I got back, we started having some real concern. And the very first concern was particularly with our senior center, because here we have a population that it was thought of at that time that, oh, they might have, particular concern with it. And we are almost encouraging these people to come gather at the senior center. So we had our director of the senior center, Nancy Likens, and myself, and our service director at the time, and I think our safety director, but also a county senior center. And we all just got together and we said, what do we do with this? Do we shut down? Do we just kind of like... So anyways, after that meeting, through that meeting, we basically decided we were going to suspend operations for 2 weeks. We thought, let's just let that, you remember the curve?
Yes.
Let's just kind of get through this kind of time that, let things settle down. And when we thought, well, we got to get a press release out. And I remember we were looking at trying to decide on the dates, and it was, I think it was late in the week, so we thought, okay, Friday to Friday, and we thought, do we put that Friday date? Maybe let's just not put that date in there, because what if we want to wait till the following Monday that we open? So we literally thought we were going to be closing for 2 weeks. And then it hit.
What was going through your mind when you realized it shut down? Because you have to coordinate with what the state and the county.
Yeah, I will tell you that it was a blur. It really was a blur during those months when things hit in the months afterwards, because first of all, we have a tremendous responsibility in the city. Number one is we have employees that we want to make sure that they are safe, but we're providing essential services in many aspects. So how do you handle that?
Yeah.
I mean, we were able to, and people, we're a public building. People come here to see people at City Hall. And so we had to figure out, well, how do we keep them safe? And so we figured out some of our positions, we could have them do their things at home. Wait a minute, we don't have computers set up for them at home. And so there was a process to be able to get those individuals that we could at home so we could spread out other people. So anyways, that was one process. But there are others, like we have individuals that are providing a service that is essential. They have to come to work. So we put into place things like splitting shifts a little bit. Okay, you come in a half hour early, you guys come out in a half hour later. Lunch, nobody's congregating for lunch anymore. You guys come at this time, you guys come at this time. And so we did a lot of those types of things. And, you know, of course, the masks and all those different things. But bottom line is that we as a governmental entity, you know, there were the mask mandates and that sort of thing that came from the state. We didn't have the ability to say, well, the state's saying you got to wear a mask. We're not going to wear a mask. We don't have the ability to do that. If the state says we got to wear a mask, we got to wear a mask. And of course, it's, you know, that's
yes.
If we want to stay open, if a business wanted to stay open, they got to agree to what the state put in place. Now, I will tell you, prior to the mask mandate, I was getting calls. You know, we should be, you know, everybody should be wearing a mask. Mayor, you need to make sure that everybody wears a mask. And I said, you know what, we're not getting into that. What we're going to do is we're going to follow the state guidelines. And so we could have put into place, if we wanted to, if City Council and myself, we wanted to put into place, we could have put in something more strict. We just can't put it into place less strict. And so we had to follow, as I said, the state guidelines. And then, but I chose, and council, we were not going to put anything more strict, because I'd get a call, we should be masking, we need to do this. And the other person said, you know, when the government, you know, governor said we have to do mask mandate, people are like, we don't want to do this, don't make us do this. You know.
How was it when it finally went to shutdown and all these businesses had to close? A lot of people assumed that it was the city that did it, but it wasn't the city's decision.
No. I will say that what we tried to do the best we could, because as you said, I mean, we, you know, the health department in the county, I thought they did a tremendous job, because a lot of times people think, oh, governmental, you know, health department. They were doing their best, I thought, to help out businesses, because we would actually have employees, like I won't say the manufacturer, but we had a manufacturer, and we'd have employees call up and they'd say, well, they're not putting in all the protocols that they're supposed to be doing, and I don't feel safe coming into this business. And we've called the health department because they wanted to go home. they were trying, and so I'd call up the health department and I said, listen, I got this complaint, you know, about this particular business. And so they worked with that business so that they could keep their doors open.
Yes.
And I thought that was tremendous, because they did everything that they could. If a business felt that they were essential, and they told the health department they are essential because they provide these particular things, they said, great, let's figure out how we can help you stay open. And because it's one thing to stay open, but it's another that a company all of a sudden has an outbreak, because they have to do things if there's an outbreak. I mean, just even in the city here, we were, you know, I was concerned, you know, we have some of our departments are smaller and they provide an essential service. What if it goes through an entire department and we don't have the people in place that we need to provide the service? And so we had to put into place Plan B, Plan C, and you know, fortunately, we had no interruptions of essential services. We were able to get through, but you know, we had some concerns, because we're like, oh, this person has COVID, and they were sitting with this person, so that person has to stay home because they were exposed, and it becomes very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, you know, we complied with the regulations that were put to us, and but we did the best we could, and we kept businesses open, and we worked with them the best we could. One of the things that we were trying to do is, how are we going to help our businesses, you know, continue functioning when they were in that crazy state? So for example, our restaurants, we were very concerned about our restaurants, and they had to go to a completely different model. How do they do whatever? And we put together, it was called Wadsworth Eats, and you know, we got information, you know, what time they were opening, what time they closed, if you're able to do pickup, delivery, whatever they were offering. And we provided a link to where you could go to access their phone number and everything. And we put it all organized. It's still on the website. We did that for not only restaurants, but we also did it for our commercial, our retail,
Yes.
because they were, also hurting. And so we had Wadsworth Eats and Wadsworth Shops. And then we tried to promote that, trying to get that word out as much as we possibly could.
How do you think going forward, obviously, even at my company, we didn't have computers right away for everybody.
Yeah.
And you learned a lot through this process. So I'm trying to go on a positive spin. Going forward, what are some of the things that you learned that you're going to keep implementing in City Hall and within the community that you learned?
Well, I think many companies, and I would say the city as well, we've learned that there is a place for virtual meetings. Certainly not all. But there is a place from that. So for example, that meeting that I said that we had with the schools, that we used to be those in person. Well, we see each other quite a bit, we coordinate a lot, and we're all very busy people, so we just get online now, and we just have a meeting. We're very efficient, and that's fine. There are other meetings that we still feel the need, because there's a lot of discussion, communication, sidebar conversations, those talks before you have the meeting and the talks after the meeting, that are important for other meetings that need to be in person. But there is definitely a place. And I will say that it has been an efficient thing for me, because I used to have to go to Medina quite a bit for some county meetings. And to be able to have the ability to go online for those, it's been very beneficial, because, it's a half-hour travel time there, half-hour travel time home. So, and then the sidebar conversations.
Yes.
But those are now by phone. But, I still go and meet occasionally in Medina, but it's not as often. So I would say that's probably the biggest change that has occurred with that. I think we are certainly still very safety-minded. COVID, even though I consider it, that was a different. It's still here, but the majority of the issue is past us. We're still cautious, because we've had situations even more recently where we've had some outbreaks, and so we still are very careful. We'll get together, we'll be up in our conference room, and I'm sitting here and somebody's sitting over here and somebody's over sitting here. If we don't need to be right next to each other, spread out a little bit, and that's fine.
I know a lot of the businesses got creative. They started working together. A lot of them created apps online, carry out, pick up, a lot of things that weren't offered before. But now a lot of these businesses feel that we are the post-COVID friendly, let's shop at the businesses. A lot of people are feeling that they're strapped. Some people feel that, some of the places that are for rent are just too much. Is there anything that the city is able to do to help the citizens, who are looking to open up a business, that feel that they just can't afford the rent, or they just can't afford it?
I would recommend anybody in that particular position to reach out to our economic development department. There are, small business loans, and there's other types of helps and resources. A lot of times they need help just negotiating to be, hey, this is my first business, and I don't know exactly how to go about that.
Yes.
And so I would recommend that they would reach out to our economic development division. We're very fortunate. I mean, I look at really citywide, and we have very few, I would say, vacancies or areas where, hey, nobody's going into that, and that's going to be vacant forever and ever. Things get snatched up pretty quickly around here, which is a good thing. But with the flip side is that means that rents are,
Yes,
because they're commanding a good rent, and as you said, prices have been going up lately. So.
Now, going forward, as mayor, you participate in a lot of events, and what I felt very amazing is when you did the last 9/11, and I saw you give your speech, and you got emotional.
Yeah.
Like that was something to you. What is your favorite part about doing this job? Is it the desk stuff? Is it going out and seeing the community? What's the best part?
There are a lot of wonderful parts. Hard for me to say. Yeah, I do. I have to try to keep my emotions in check. I tell them, I said, don't ask me for Veterans Day or Memorial Day or 9/11. It's just hard because, I mean, you in the military are very familiar. It's just, it's a tender spot in my heart. And I just went to the American Legion this past week. They had a wonderful dinner for those that were doing Boys and Girls State. And that was a wonderful event for me to attend because I, first of all, am reminded about the American Legion and the good that they do. And then I'm reminded of a wonderful program that is in place for boys and girls to be able to learn about government. And they had a great experience, so if you were asking me this week, that was my favorite part this week. If you asked me today, it was, I had a wonderful opportunity to speak with some school children about city government. And they got a chance to hear a little bit about what our government's all about. That was my favorite part. Going to events downtown, that's wonderful. But then also sitting and talking with either our service director or safety director about some of the things that are going on in some of our divisions and the amazing, vision and the amazing opportunities that we have going up ahead. We had great meetings this week. We're doing some wonderful improvements to our parks. And I'm excited for that.
Yes.
I've been wanting to I've been thinking that was something that we really needed to have improved for a while. And all the stars are starting to align. And I'm excited for that project to happen. And so that's a favorite part for me because at the end of the day, I'll get to see those improvements. And I have the privilege, and to me, I really do, I think it's a privilege and an honor to say that I had a little bit of opportunity to be involved with that.
Now, I had you as a speaker at, I do the fundraiser for Wounded Warrior Project. I do that in honor of family and friends. I wasn't in, but that's what I do because I can feel that I can relate to them. When I do that, it's strenuous. It's a crazy run, but I learned that a certain somebody did a triathlon, which I thought it blew my mind. I was like, "Are you?" Because you're a public figure. People assume that you don't really have extra things to do, but you did, and your husband helped you.
Yes. Well, that goes back to that supportive husband I have. Yeah. No, I did. It was last year. I did an Ironman, a full Ironman, which is, I will say, that was a crazy long day. But it's 2.4 miles swim, which is a very long swim.
Yes.
And then you bike for 112 miles. And then you run a marathon after that, which is a lot. And so it was a long day. And, I enjoy exercising. I enjoy those different aspects, swimming, biking, and running. I enjoy each of those. But to do something like that, it takes a lot of training. And so I would do my regular things during the week. And then on like Saturday particularly, I had a very long day of training. And or I would come into work late on one day during the week because then you start, all of a sudden you just have to, do a lot of training. And so that's kind of, I don't say it's a once in a lifetime because I've always said if one of my kids maybe wanted to do one, they would say, "Mom, do one with me." I would maybe entertain that, but barring something like that, that's probably the one time I did a full, because it takes a lot of training. But I'm doing a half in about a week.
What was that feeling when you crossed the finish line, when you were done?
You want to cry.
Yes.
You want to cry. And when you came back from your exerting, what you did is what was crazy for me. I'm like, how did you do that? But you want to cry because you worked hard for a goal. You trained a long time for it, and it came to fruition. And for me, it's kind of a hobby. My kids are all grown and gone, although I do have my daughter and son-in-law and grandkids that are here. But But anyways, I have some time in the evenings and on the weekends to have for me. And as I said, I have a very supportive husband because with one of those races, there's a lot of gear, there's a lot of stuff, and mainly it's the bike. He makes sure that my bike is in perfect order because he's like, the last thing I want you to have happen is, 56 miles away, because there's another 56 miles this way, that something happens to it. So he wants to make sure it's perfect.
So did you practice swimming at the Wadsworth YMCA? And then where did you practice biking?
I do biking on trails. I am not a on the road biker.
So you go hardcore.
Well, some people would say hardcore is more on the road, but I'm I'm a very safety conscious conservative person, and so during races they have them closed course most of the time so that there's no traffic or anything. But I normally I got my helmet on and I'm on a trail and going on a paved trail. I'm going full steam.
Well, I commend you for that because I can swim, but it's more of a doggy paddle. And the biking thing with the broken tailbone, I can't go that far. And that is exerting that I thought that was amazing. Yeah. And that shows your children everything that you've been doing. And as a mayor, you've gone through COVID. You've gone through COVID, you've raised children, you've done a whole bunch of volunteer, you're the longest running mayor, and as a female, what advice do you give to the younger youth out there to get to where you are? I mean, because it's been a long process for you.
Yeah, I'm getting old. Yeah, just hang in there, just get old. No, I think, everybody has their niche. And maybe my niche was, a little athletics as an older adult. Actually, I was always a walker, but it wasn't until my kids were grown that I kind of started doing these things. And so first, maybe the advice is never too late. Yes. It's important to keep healthy and to do things. So I think it's never too late. I think the other is that, there's no pamphlet that says you can't do whatever. I mean, you do what you want to do. You put your mind to it and do what your passion is. Like with the sports, that's kind of my time. That's me time, and it's something that I'm a pretty person that likes kind of consistency, and so every morning I get up and I'm at the Y, working out, and that's kind of my thing. But for somebody else, that might be completely different. It might be look very different. But I think that everybody comes here with different skills and talents and interests, and I think you just go for whatever you can.
Do you have any advice for the younger females out there that feel that they would love to be where you are or another higher position, but they feel that they can't?
Yeah.
Do you got any advice for them?
I would say is, once again, we live in a wonderful time in this world, and I know that there are individuals that have been affected and maybe have had a different experience than I've had. But living in Wadsworth, in this wonderful community, I have felt that I have been, received more respect than I, respect, and have been, people have been very kind to me. And I think if they work hard and have confidence that, hey, I can do this.
Yes.
If they have confidence and show confidence, I think that the sky's the limits.
Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I'm hoping that the community has learned a lot as well. I thought I was busy, but I think you've done an amazing job. And one of the best parts, like I said, is seeing you at the events, and you're a real person. You have emotion. You're not standing there robot style. You have participated a lot in this community. I think the community owes a big thanks to you. And I hope we clarified, several things, that you don't overall make slap decisions on things. The city works as a team. There's a lot of divisions, a lot of departments, and you go by the book. You go by what the code book says, and you said you do a lot of research. So your decisions are based on the law and fact. Yeah. And when a lot of people think that isn't the case, I urge you to, come and visit the City Hall, ask your questions at City Council meetings. The more you learn the better that you'll be informed when different things happen, when we pass levies, new buildings, new things. So I urge the community to get active, to come to your city hall, to speak to who your councilman is in your area. The more you know, the more you're involved. The things that upset you may not be there anymore. Thank you so much, and I would like to say again, congratulations on that triathlon. I think that's amazing. I wish I could do that.
No, I'm telling you, I couldn't do what you do, so.
Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and until next time, thank you.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.